Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk about the state of Black Ops Cold War because I'm getting ready to step away from 6v6 CoD for a little bit and go back to Verdansk and see how I'm feeling about Battle Royale. Maybe my lag and other frustrating issues will have resolved with a nice little vacation from BR, but I've been spending some more time in 6v6 and Cold War land and things aren't looking very good here. Black Ops Cold War, in no uncertain terms, is in rough shape right now. I think the player base for this game is very small, at least for most Call of Duty games, and this is a subjective judgment based on how many people are streaming, or I should say not streaming it on Twitch, the viewership numbers, the relatively small impact on YouTube and Twitter when you post Cold War stuff, and the general community sentiment, along with my friends list not showing, well, really anybody on the game except for me at the moment. Even most of the content seems geared more toward Warzone, the Battle Pass content that is, and not so much for Cold War itself. Cold War specific offerings are continuing, but they're getting slimmer over time, and they're also getting sillier, which kind of indicates an end of DLC life cycle. So based on all of these things, I would say that Black Ops Cold War has a very small player base for a Call of Duty game and is probably not in the best of health. It reminds me of an absolutely hilarious 402 Thunder tweet that I read. It's so brutal and so mean, but I can't stop laughing at it. It was essentially a meme tweet where he was saying, "I was having a rough day and left my copy of Black Ops Cold War in my car. Somebody broke the glass to break in and left 2 more copies of Black Ops Cold War, so now I have 3 copies and I don't know what to do with them." And as mean as it was, as ridiculous as it was, and as much as I try not to engage in the toxic part of the community like that, I couldn't stop laughing at it, and I also kind of couldn't stop thinking about it. And yeah, Cold War is in rough shape, but instead of making a video complaining, instead of making a video being very negative and toxic and, you know, giving Treyarch the hardest of times over the product that they did or didn't deliver, I'm going to take the opposite approach, and I'm going to say I think Treyarch could use a break. They could use a break, not necessarily excusing the games that have come out, but they could use an opportunity to make a real game the next time. And the rest of this video is probably going to seem like dev simping or COD corn swaggling, for lack of a better word, but I'm serious, and I want to explain why I'm serious about Treyarch just needing a break. If you think about what Treyarch has created over the past couple of years, they went from being the little brother studio of Infinity Ward to the premier COD creating studio for Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, and Black Ops 3. Those 3 games were amazing Call of Duty games, especially 2 and 3, debatably some of the best in the franchise. I've been thinking a lot about Black Ops 3 lately. That game is so good, it's just kind of been on my mind. These were made during an era of 3-year development cycles. None of these games had crossplay, none of them had battle passes, none of them had multi-generation console launches except for Blops 3, which we'll talk about in a little bit. None of them had a forced battle royale mode at launch. They didn't have to crank out new skins every other day or bi-weekly DLC updates and new seasons and mid-seasons and new streaks and all this kind of stuff. Treyarch did their very best work when they were free to work with less constraints, when they were free to work on a full dev cycle with a full budget and just be allowed to do what they wanted to do without having all this other kind of stuff crammed on them. And in that time, you can take a look at one of my, again, Black Ops 3. I've been loving that. That game's just been on my brain lately. A full 3-year dev cycle, and what you got out of it was a fully fleshed out, polished, and fun multiplayer experience. Black Ops 3 had some of the best multiplayer that COD had to offer. You had the end of the zombie story in epic fashion, tons of great zombies content. You had a full campaign, a very trippy one, but still a full campaign. You had dead ops. You even had little time trial parkour runs to kind of teach people how to use the new wall run mechanics and stuff, and I found that mode to be very fun. Similarly, Black Ops 2 had a full dev cycle. It launched with a whole campaign, choose your own adventure style kind of thing, with some of the most iconic zombies that COD has ever had, great multiplayer, and I think it also might have had dead ops. I can't quite remember. Maybe that was a Blops 1, was dead ops. But then when you compare that to a more modern Treyarch game like Black Ops 4, you'll see that Black Ops 4's campaign got totally scrapped for largely unknown reasons. I'm assuming it was the rush and Battle Royale and all that, so you got this hodgepodge of character missions that was kind of like a bad version of a campaign. Its Battle Royale was required to be added with very little notice and just insanely rushed and tacked onto the game at the end to compete with everything else. I still think they did a great job with it, but my God, I can't imagine the resources that it cost. And while it wasn't multi-generational, Black Ops 4 did have to support PS4 and PS4 Pro and Xbox One and Xbox One X along with PC. That's a brutal development schedule with a lot of requirements, but Treyarch somehow still managed to crank out a multiplayer, zombies, battle royale, and a little sprinkling of campaign here and there. Multiplayer and zombies, I would say, were fully fleshed out and had the normal amount of CoD content. Blackout was our very first taste of Call of Duty Battle Royale, and honestly really good in my opinion. Over time, it improved massively from its initial beta release to the final version that you have now. I don't know how many of you remembered, but man, I was playing with Minecraft trees in this game, like two-dimensional trees when it first came out. It was brutal, but they did a lot of great stuff. They added a lot of new modes and maps and points of interest and stuff. Then you can take a look at Black Ops Cold War, and this problem gets worse. Black Ops Cold War had a rush development cycle because it was 2 years instead of 3 because something or another happened at Sledgehammer Games. So they got a whole year taken off of their development cycle. And then half of the 2 years they had were spent developing in the unexpected pandemic, which involved office shutdowns, California hard lockdowns, new work from home environment, working while sick. Some of the people got COVID. There was massive file transfers that people had to do, and their home internet wasn't prepared for that. Yet they still had to deliver campaign, multiplayer, zombies, dead ops, and maybe a battle royale. I highly suspect that Fireteam was supposed to be the battle royale in Black Ops Cold War, but it probably got cut last minute just so that Activision could focus on Warzone. I just get the impression that Warzone was more popular than Activision ever intended, and they're like, we're going to keep this cash cow going. We're not going to have any more competing battle royales. We can't have like Blackout and Warzone and then another Treyarch thing. We're just going to all funnel to this thing, which was a lot of man hours wasted, and they ended up repurposing those maps into Fireteam. The campaign team, as you saw in the early previews and reveals, had to do all of its recording remotely. You couldn't even get the actors on studio and set, so you had like voice actors at home, and you had to teach them how to do face rigging technology and record it with all this complicated stuff. Black Ops Cold War would be the first time that Treyarch has to deal with crossplay, which is a level of complexity in and of itself. Then you have to consider that Treyarch was forced to launch this game on more consoles and more different platforms than any game ever, perhaps. The game had to launch for Xbox One, Xbox One X, which is almost an entirely different console, then PS4 and PS4 Pro, then PlayStation 5 digital and regular, then Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X, and have PC support on top of that. So everything except for Switch and mobile, and maybe Macintosh. No, I think you actually can play it on Mac. And that's quite a lot, guys. That's, I think, 7 or 8 different systems, and there's a huge loss of efficiency, of resources, of dev time, of trying to like optimize and de-optimize and re-optimize the game where it can actually run on all of those things. You end up with cut ideas, wasted dev time playing with shaders and textures and lighting and stuff. And because of that, Black Ops Cold War didn't launch with a lot of content. The campaign was short but fun. I genuinely enjoyed the campaign. It was only a couple hours long, but I had a lot of fun with what I got out of it. But, you know, campaign's not my main thing. The multiplayer seriously lacked content. That was pretty brutal. I remember they, Combined Arms was fun in games. I had a good time with that. Fireteam is interesting, but the basic 6v6 experience got shafted to the point where they were like trimming Combined Arms to make strike maps that are still very popular today, just to kind of flesh out the total number of maps. And that is the reason that Black Ops Cold War is in the shape that it's in. That's the reason the game had such weird animations and lighting and bugs and, lack of content. And that is at one time a criticism, but it's also a miracle that we got any Call of Duty game at all, given those circumstances. Imagine that you were given a project that was supposed to take 3 years to complete, and then immediately told, oh, well, too bad, you've got 2 years now, and right in the middle of that, you had to completely change all of your workflow to work from home for like 100 people, and it just screws up everything. It's super hard. So just imagine what Treyarch is going to make if they're able to get a break. Imagine if either of these games had a full, proper 3-year dev cycle, or what it would have been like without Activision forcing changes, adding and removing battle royales at the last minute, or if Treyarch could perhaps have time to actually polish these games without just rushing them out to ensure that they somehow launch on 9 different consoles and get as many sales as possible with questionable quality assurance. These guys have been put through the grinder here. Treyarch went from the premium Call of Duty studio to, oh my god, what did you make, twice in a row, because every single time they're getting shafted. They used to be like the studio, but they've been squeezed by Activision and shareholders and pandemics and deadlines and all sorts of goofy stuff over and over and over again, and it's a miracle that we're even getting any Call of Duty games at all. I would love to see what kind of game Treyarch can make for next generation consoles with a full 3-year developer cycle without having to add or remove Battle Royale, without having to add or remove campaign, and without any sort of weird launching on like 10 different consoles, to just do the same basic, like launch on PlayStation 5, launch on the new Xbox Series in PC, let that be its thing, let them develop what they want to do, and I think it could be great. On that same idea, though, I think that Treyarch is also suffering from the exact same thing that most AAA studios are suffering from right now, which is a severe lack of polish created by the ridiculous amount of pressure to force games out early to meet shareholder demands, and games are being created with an extremely broad scope and too many features. If you work at a big corporate game studio, you're going to have to launch for a big publisher. The big publisher is going to ask for all sorts of stuff that you may or may not want to include in their game, and it's going to tie into their 5-year marketing campaign, and it's going to connect to Origin or Steam or Battle.net or whatever platform, Ubisoft Connect, whatever they're kind of pushing at the moment. And it just has to have all this stuff and all this integrations, and that's why indie devs are oddly able to put out higher quality products these days just due to a lack of complexity. Indie developers only have to make a game, a program that runs. Many of these are single player, which is simpler, but they just have to put something out that runs however they want it to run without a billion demands from corporate, without having to put it out 6 months early, and they can launch it on one console or no consoles or PC only, and they don't have to support every device in the world, which is why oddly, indie games have had better quality than AAA games recently, and I think that trend is going to continue. So, yeah, I've been simping for Treyarch here. I know that this is definitely considered some COD corn swaggling, but I've been spending more time in 6v6 land just thinking about this, just kind of going over it in my head and wondering what's been going wrong with these games, and I genuinely think that Treyarch has been getting the short end of the stick over and over and over again, and I want to see them make an absolute banger of a game like Black Ops 3 with a full development cycle next time. I just hope that we get that sometime in the future. So that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.